All right.
Alrighty.
I don't know what we're going to talk about today. We skipped last week, so we need to do this.
Let's do time capsule. Where are we at? How we,
We're in Austin. We just finished a spiritual retreat. It's 3 days. A bunch of, it's like a dude's retreat. That was cool. And where are we at? Yeah, we're at Austin. What else?
Yeah, we're in Austin. That's it. In an Airbnb. Got to fly out in a couple hours. Head back to our normal lives and hopefully take some of the lessons and that we got out of this retreat and be able to apply it in our lives, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and manifest a real change, right? Like in ourselves. Like, we're obviously in 3 days. You don't just suddenly become a new person, right? Don't suddenly come back and be able to change your entire environment. So I think that's probably where we're positioned.
I do think the point of the spiritual retreat, or a lot of times when people do stuff like spiritual retreats, meditation retreats, and things like that, is because they want to live better, become better people, and have better lives in general because of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because spiritual retreat or otherwise, or I mean even yoga classes, right? It's very customary to set an intention. So you're going in there with something specific, right? Not just going in there and just doing whatever, but like very specific in direction and so yeah, I think that's where we're trying to see how we can do what we do that.
Well, to live better, the implication is that you're doing something, that you want to be doing something different than what you're currently doing, right? And that'll make it better.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. So this is really great because even from the start, I think what's really interesting about when we think about how to be better, there is this implied idea that there is a better and a worse. Right. And I think a lot of it, in order to be better, you actually have to even also understand what better means. And in your life, like what is better and what is not better?
Does the implication that you need to be better or that you want to be better imply that you're not good enough in a bad way? And does that affect your current experience in a bad way? And will that always be the case then? Because if there always is a better, then you will never be at the moment of better. Like even if you were better than you are now.
Yeah. So I know that you asked that as a question, but I think you said that so well that it sounded like an answer to me.
That was more of a, yeah.
I know.
That's like
No, but I'm being honest with you, and at least I'll speak for myself. So I'm not gonna speak for you, but almost certainly yes, right? And I think that's the issue is that to say something is beautiful implies that there's something that's ugly, right?
Right.
And you can go around wanting more of good and what's beautiful and in meditative states, right? In spiritual practice, you might want to, if you go into meditation with a goal, for example, of, I want to be more calm or at peace, well, that almost traps you and will ensure that you won't be there, because if you're not at peace, then you will attach yourself to, being at peace and feel bad for not being at peace.
Right. The fact that you want to be at peace implies that you're not at peace. So almost like you'll never be at peace if you want to be at peace. So how do you... All right,
we're done with the podcast. We just wrapped it up.
It's like a mind game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess perhaps there's a balance. Understanding where you're at in your journey and enjoying that portion of the journey, because the journey is the destination, but still understanding that that you're moving towards a destination, but the journey is also the destination. That's super meta.
Yeah. So I guess to bring it back to the podcast format, in our retreat, there's I think we were talking about examining the structure of a lot of these retreats, where a lot of what it does in the beginning is creates this sense of openness, right? And that openness allows you to maybe re-examine parts of yourself or your life or the environment that you might not have seen in a certain way before. But you can't stay in that space of openness. Obviously, you can't continue to move through life. You have to find a way to integrate and reintegrate, not only reintegrate yourself, but also now reintegrate to your environment. And so a part of what I think we just I'm working through live here on this pod was, because those 3 days were, immensely rich, right? Mm-hmm. The sheer volume of great conversations that we had, experiences, gave us, definitely gave me a lot to think about, and being able to make sense to it, being able to put words now to those things.
Or trying to.
Yeah, it's like it's a live integration, and you. I think that obviously these questions are hard to answer. Otherwise, like why would we have, why would we even be here? Because that means a lot of times these questions and the answers are essentially, as Hack just kind of showed, like paradoxes.
It's not really an answer though.
Yeah, no, it isn't an answer. It's more of like a gesture.
I'm like asking more questions.
Right? Yeah. Like the answer is more of a like it's a this,
Okay, let me try to bring it down to the ground. I'm not gonna be able to, but
yeah.
So the implication is you go to a spiritual retreat to help you live better. When you go to the spiritual retreat, you get taken almost like out of your environment, out of your friends and family, out of everything, basically, out of work, out of your life, and you're in a different space for X amount of time. But the important thing is you're out of your environment, you're out of that space, and so you're able to see things a lot more objectively. See yourself with less blinders on, with less of your biases, with less of the stuff that got you to where you currently are. And when you can see things more objectively, when you're outside the system a little bit, you become more open to possibilities that you would never have been able to see if you're just like right in the middle of chaos and the stuff going on in your life. When you're within the system, when you're around your friends, when you're around the people that you see every day, when you're around work, when you're dealing with the friction of life, you do reach a certain level of equilibrium as a person. Excuse me. You do reach a certain level of equilibrium as a person, because that's just how it works. It's like, you become friends with this person. That's how they influence you. You do this at work in order to make sure you get your work in on time. You do this, and then so that aggregate becomes Steven or Hack. But because you're so busy, you're not able to be as intentional about it. So when you come out of the system, you can see, with a much clearer view, and then come back in with intentions you never would have been able to come up with yourself. But I do think that the spiritual retreat gives you that ability to be open to these intentions. Maybe you might see, hey, I'm not showing enough love to the people in my life. I probably wouldn't have seen that if I was in the middle of my work day, especially if I'm arguing with someone that I love, but then I'm not able to see it because we're arguing. And obviously, if I'm arguing with you, then it might seem like I don't love you, but then taking a step back, being outside of the situation, you remember, hey, at the end of the day, still love this person. So how do you go back into your life and remember that for the next time that you absolutely are going to argue with that person, for the next time that you absolutely are going to, butt heads with, this other person you really care about, or somebody that looks up to you, and you realize, hey, they look up to you, but you haven't been living up to your end of the bargain as someone that they should look up to. How do you bridge that gap when you realize something like that? And I think the spiritual retreat that we had helps you realize that. But then the tricky part is, now that you realize that, you go back in. How do you not fall prey to, you know, the equilibrium of not realizing that in the first place? And I'm posing questions here. I'm not giving answers, and hoping Steven can do the hard part and give me some answers. You have any answers, bro?
So I just want to say something. I think, heck, you just hit top form.
What do you mean?
In what you just said. I think you just hit top form. And
Oh.
I know that you have another podcast scheduled up, and I was just so happy, because I think that if this topic came up and you needed to on the spot say something on this, I think you just nailed it. So I think we should clip that. But you also have a knack of, by the way, asking a question that is a very good answer to the question.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll say that much. So I think that was so beautiful and spot on. And I think that there's the first step, I think, to anything, right? I think is understanding the causal relationship. And as you said, you need a sense of distance or detachment in order to be able to diagnose objectively, and not be triggered. And so let me use an example, right? One thing that I've realized in the past, not particularly in this retreat, but in the past, which is that a lot of times, a lot of the fights or situations or bad or undesirable moments in my life are because I'm just tired. Like I just didn't get to sleep that day or something, right? And so that was like step one. And I didn't actually even realize it until, I had like taken a step back. I was like, oh man, like, okay, so this stuff happens. It was not fun. It was not great. And why? Oh, it was because I was sleepy, right? Or I was tired. And because I was sleepy and tired, this one trigger that I had, which, maybe it's not like that big of a deal, but because I was vulnerable, that trigger was able to hit and it caused this reaction. And so I think understanding that chain of events, because it's not just like not having sleep immediately means that, you're going to be in that situation. It was like sleep causes this, causes that. And now I've made that realization. Great. So what? Now what do I want to do, right? Well, one thing I could do is, okay, try to fix my sleep, right? But there's probably still going to be times where I don't get good sleep. So the second thing is practice the awareness of knowing when I haven't gotten enough sleep. And then the second bit would be that trigger still is still there regardless. And I think this is where the break is supposed to happen, right? The pattern, the expectation, where once that trigger is flipped, in that moment, pausing with everything that you have to know, to break the loop, right? To break that, oh, when this happens, this always happens afterward. And you can't just do it once. You have to do it over and over and over until that trigger has lost all of its power, right? And I guess that's the way I would see how you invoke change in yourself that starts with a realization and has to manifest in some kind of like structural action.
It has to be an action.
Yeah.
Does it have to be an action?
In order to cause change?
Right.
Yeah. And so
Does it have to be an external action?
No, I don't think so.
So it could be an internal thing.
Right.
Like you can have a realization and a reframing within yourself that maybe doesn't even like touch the outside world in the moment. But then because you've reframed it within yourself, then that internal change will result in different actions down the line. So eventually it turns into an action.
Yeah, yeah.
Eventually it has to turn into an action.
Right. And so Yeah,
The
but
trigger is internal, but if you can change the trigger, the internal change without even any actions, the implied thing is that later the action will be
correct. And I think that what we're actually kind of bumping up against now is cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical therapy, right?
what's dialectical therapy?
It's
Just talking.
yeah, it's the activity. I think regaining sovereignty, which is a word that came up in our retreat a lot, over your mind. And so it doesn't have to be an external action, but it's still an action, an internal action, right? And so, for example, here's a great example that cognitive CBT uses all the time, which is, you know, like let's say that, you know, you have something happens, and your mind always goes to this reasoning, right? This person didn't return my call, right? They didn't return my call. They must not like me, right? And your brain is always thinking that like, oh man, this person didn't call. I must have said something wrong. They don't like me. But in that moment with CBT, right? I think what the practice kind of helps ask of you is, you know what? Actually, think of all the other reasons that they might have not responded to your call. Maybe they were just super busy. Maybe like something happened with the phone where the call didn't go through. Maybe, right? And so you actually have to actively think of alternate scenario, like alternate things, and even if you were right, actively thinking through, okay, so what? Like how, okay, maybe I did do something wrong and they did, and then is it the worst thing in the world? Is it like, let's actually walk through the consequences of that and why, instead of just saying like an amorphous general, like, oh, it's bad, they don't like me, but okay, so what does it mean if they actually don't like me, right? What are the actual consequences? Why do I feel bad about that? And so I think that is like an active internal conversation that needs to happen in order to kind of reroute, rewire, restructure neurons, actually, if you think about it, right?
So understanding yourself,
understanding the world and others, right?
Understanding yourself is probably the most important, I think. Because if you don't understand yourself, you can't understand the lens by which you see other people, so your understanding of other people will be incredibly biased by your own self-view, perhaps. I'm thinking as I talk. I do think that you do have to understand yourself first. Like when you're talking about the trigger, why is that trigger there? It's more important than the actual situation in itself, or the person, or the thing that caused the trigger. It's why is that trigger there in the first place? And that's examining the self and understanding that is much more important than understanding the other person. Or I wouldn't say much more important, but I think it's more, if you don't understand the trigger, but then you can't have an understanding of the other person that's not incredibly biased.
Yeah.
So I guess that's step one. Look inside. Are we? I don't have any, or maybe I have too many thoughts. I don't know. You got the floor, bro.
No, it's great.
Ran out of things to say.
Yeah. No, I think it's organic and beautiful in its own way, that this is actually live integration, right? Like
Yeah.
we are trying to collapse our wavelengths because there's just so much, like everything in the room, right? Too many signals, and we're trying to find one radio station to get back home to.
I mean, our flight back is in about 3 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And the retreat just ended yesterday. So it was like a 3.5 day thing. So we've been gone for an extended weekend, pretty much. But we do feel like we have a lot of work to do. I mean, it was a lot of work during the retreat, you know, to get deep enough to be able to understand what we understand now about, I guess, like everything we need to work on.
Yeah, yeah.
But the hard part is actually going back and doing the work. When I talk about the equilibrium state that we reach, like based on our environments and our friends and our family and our work and all that stuff at home, I do think when we get back, there's like going to be a certain gravity that pulls you back to being that. I mean, the reason that I'm Hack and I'm the way I am is because of everything in my environment. That includes people, that includes family, that includes work, that includes all the stresses of my life, all the relationships, everything aggregated. And the way I react is this, you know, this Hack, this the way I am. In the past 3 days, I know I can be better because I've been able to come out of the system and be able to see more objectively and be able to have more intention. Like, it's hard to have intention when you're in there, in the system, you know, arguing with people, you know, like trying to make deadlines, trying to like do this, trying to do that, getting pulled in like 10 different directions. I guess this conversation with Steven, because Steven's, I mean, I think we're in a similar situation. You know, I'm sure Steven has a lot of, you know, frictions of his life that aggregates him to, like, you know, Steven as a person. But realizing that we can be better and then having intention to be better is much different than coming back into this situation where gravity is going to pull us back to how we used to be. And then being like, okay, when this happens, I want to do this instead. When this happens, I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah. So here I'm gonna make an attempt at a so what. Okay. So I think that there's like 3 stages, 3 axes that I'm thinking, right? Like there's the disintegration of whatever you were before, right? Just like break yourself back apart again into the pieces, right? And then a kind of a repacking that you need to do, right, of that set. And then taking that, whatever that we are now, because there is a change regardless, right? I know that when we go back, there's pressures that are going to shape us back, like kind of push us back into the form that we were before. But we are in this moment in a different form. Right. Now, that form now has to go back into kind of the keyhole that was there. Of life. And how can we influence that shape a little bit more? And so I think that the so what would be, depending on where you are, you might be in one of those 3 states, right? And I would imagine for a lot of us who haven't had the opportunity to, you know, make space and you know, pause a little bit in our lives, it might be that, hey, man, I haven't had an opportunity to experience just detachment, stillness, and and openness and disintegration. So maybe that's something you should look for. Maybe it can just be a hike, right? Maybe just some more meditation. Or maybe you are in a state where you don't know what's next, you don't know what to do, you don't know who you are, you don't know how to like pack that into something, into a direction. And maybe that's the thing that you should be looking for a direction into, right? Or then maybe you're in the 3rd phase where you have a being, you have a thing, a knowingness of what you want to be, who you want to go, you know, but you're just struggling to like actually make that fit in the environment that you are. Right. And so I think it's useful, I think, for me to maybe now always ask myself, like, which one of those 3 states am I in?
What are the 3 states again?
Like the one that just breaks you apart, right? Opens you up.
So like after you meditate for a long time, you're like, oh shit.
Right, going on a vacation, right? But a real vacation,
like getting out of the system.
Basically. Yeah, getting out of the system, getting like a state of, I'm too deep in the system, I need to get out. Whatever mechanism you might want to do that, and then maybe I'm already out and I have so many pieces, but I don't know how to put them back together, right? So that's like, it's like the integration of the self right? So I would say disintegration of the self.
So getting out of the system and
Yeah.
then getting back in the system.
Yeah. Integration of the self, and then integration of the self back into the system.
Wait, say that. What was the second one again? I thought the second one was what you stated for 2. So.
Second one is.
Or I thought what you just stated for 3 was what was 2.
Yeah. So there's.
Disintegration of getting out of the system.
Yeah. Disintegration of self from system.
Okay. 1.
Right. Reintegration of self.
Oh, so changing the self outside of the system.
Yeah, outside of the system.
Right.
And that's the work that you do alone.
Right.
And then the reintegration of the reintegrated self
back into the system. Because the system still
stays the same.
Yeah, the system is still the same. Like the people that you go back to have not been on the spiritual retreat with you.
Right.
They're still the same people. When you show up on Monday to work, they're gonna be like, "Oh, what's up, Steven? Hey, buddy."
Yeah.
And it's still the same people with the same, their same temperaments, their same biases and things like that. And that's the tricky part. I mean, steps 1 and 2 are both obviously challenging in their own respect too.
Right.
They're not easy to just. You don't just automatically get to step 3. But if you get to step 3 perfectly, but then you don't I guess execute anything on step 3, then it's almost like all for naught. This should be a fun one. So what?
I'm going to throw this out there because I just wanted to see your answer to it, right? And
sure.
That's what this podcast kind of is. It's
yeah.
like, I have a question. I really want to tell Hack, right? I want to see. But we were actually, because we came out here to Austin, and a lot of our friends out here were like, one of the intentions or questions they had on their retreat was like, where should I live next, right? Where do I want to live? And we were talking about what it's like moving to a new city, especially as an adult. And we actually even had a couple friends who have recently moved, but then they moved back, right? I myself just recently moved to the city a couple years back. And so this framework that we just talked about, right? Integration, reintegration, self, environment. How do you feel that might apply to someone who moves to a new city, right? So why do people usually move to new cities? Maybe we can start there.
There's a lot of reasons for moving to new cities. I mean, sometimes it's a job. Sometimes it's like a new beginning, like they want to start a family. I think a lot of the people that I'm friends with, they recently moved because they're like, oh yeah, this is where we want to raise our kids.
Yeah.
They just had a kid or they're planning on having kids. Sometimes you move just because you want like a reset and you have the luxury to do so. So I guess there's a lot of reasons people move. That is kind of like integrating yourself into another system or finding a system.
Yeah.
Like another, I guess, system of life around yourself, moving to a new city. That's pretty interesting in itself.
Yeah, I was interested in your answer because
what was the question?
Well, the frame that we just created, 1, 2, and 3, right? About disintegration, like reforming yourself, and then reintegration. But this is why I was tripped up when I wanted to ask you a question, because I think that applies when you're returning to a system that is the same, right? You're going back to where you were, right? But what was interesting, but is that true?
You're saying when people move back.
Well, I was trying to figure out like what happens if you need to reintegrate into a new system, right?
Reintegrating the system that wasn't the one that produced you in the first place.
Yeah. So let's pull the new start thread, because I think a lot of people, that's what I'm interested in, where a lot of people move into a new city because they're just stuck and they're just like, I just want something new.
Right.
And when they get to and first of all, you're gonna look at which city you want, and when you pick the city you want, you're like, that's the city I want.
Right.
It has the great culture scene, art, like it's gonna enrich me. At least there's an expectation idea. Otherwise, right? Why? Or it has like a lot of nature, and I think that satisfies step 1, where you out of your environment, right? and now you're open and you're enriched and you're like you see everything differently and you have this like game plan of how you're gonna be different, like your new self in this new city. Like, oh man, I'm gonna like do this. I'm gonna kayak every day and whatever. And then you get to that new city. You found your apartment. You know exactly what block you're in downtown. Then you have to like reform this new version of you. But then you're now trying to actually now work into a completely new system though, because it's a completely new city.
Right. So that's step 3, but you're doing it in a new city.
But you're doing it in a new city now, right? And but it's still a larger system and an environment, but it's not the one you came from.
That's different. And it's different because you're trying to find your place in a system. You're trying to find a role that used to not be there. Mm-hmm. Like in the case when you go back to the old system, there's already there's a spot for you.
Yeah.
There's a spot for you at work. There's a spot for you like in your circle of friends. There's a spot for you in your life in that spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's much different than going into like a system and there's no spot for you.
Yeah.
But you have to find and create that spot, and you have to and hopefully add value within that system, because that's usually how spots get created,
right,
within a system. I think that's a completely different beast, if you will.
Yeah. You know what's super interesting? Like, right, so that like in the so what sense, right? Like I think we talked about 3. Like if you were to evaluate your life and try to say like prescribe yourself something, like, oh, maybe I need step 1, or I need to invest in step 2, or I need to invest in step 3. There's like a 4 where it's like maybe you just need to try to integrate into a brand new system and see how that goes for you, because you'll probably learn a lot of shit about it. And even if you eventually go back to your old system, the practice of integrating in this new system is a 4th thing too. And it's funny because as you're saying this, and this is totally off the cuff, by the way, I was thinking back to what it was like when I first got to the retreat, and it was a complete new group of people, right? And these people, it was like a new system I had to figure out.
Right, because it was the context was there's 12 people in the retreat. I probably knew at least a few of the guys, maybe like 3 or 4 of the people there, and the retreat leaders. I had met them a few years back, so I knew some people, and I brought Steven with me into this group. So Steven is brand new; he's never met anyone in the group before, so it's like a new system for Steven. For me, like it was. I mean, there was people I just met there too, but then there was still like a framework that I was working with in terms of like, oh yeah, this is the guy from the last retreat. Oh, this is my friend. This is the guy that led the last one.
You've also done the retreat before too.
Right, and so I understood like, I had like a framework to work with. And then the people that knew me too, obviously like helped to be like, oh yeah, like, how's it going, dude? And so they help you, like the system forms around that, around prior expectations, around like, the last time we talked around like what we did last time. But then for you were entering a new system and you had to figure out a working framework, if you will.
Yeah. And there was a lot of that. Like, I mean, looking back now, I was like, man, there was a lot of that like happening.
Yeah. I think it takes a different skill though, too. And I think earlier when you were talking about the 4th thing, leaving the system, I don't want to complicate it too much. I think the 1, 2, 3 is a very simple but effective model that you came up with. So I don't want to make the 4th thing, because I do think the 4th thing might make it more complex than it seems. I think the 1, 2, like when you leave a system, like let's say you go to a new city, and then like you try to integrate and all that stuff, and then you end up moving back.
That's essentially step 1, almost condensed. It's
it's like
microcosm of step 1.
Yeah, it's like all condensed into step 1.
Yeah.
Because you left and then you reintegrated like you made a lot of changes.
Right.
Whether you know it or not, and when you come back, you're simply on step 3.
Yeah.
Of the 1, 2, 3 model. When you come back,
it's nested. It's a microcosm of step 1.
I want us to get back to, if we can, steer the conversation back towards step 3 and reintegrating in a system that already has like a certain keyhole of you.
Yeah.
Because I think the way the human mind works makes it so you're fighting an uphill battle. Like my idea of Stephen is a fixed idea, and it's probably based on all the experience I had of you up to this point, and it's a fixed idea. Even if you move away for 2 years and you come back, I'll be like, oh, it's Stephen. It's Stephen, and that's maybe an idea I haven't updated in 2 years because I hadn't seen you in 2 years. But we all know in 2 years, people make a shit ton of changes, especially if you move to another city and you try to integrate and it works out, it doesn't work out. Maybe you had a relationship, didn't work out, made all the realizations, changes, and you're such a different person in 2 years than when you come back into the system, or than when you had left 2 years ago. But because the way the mind works, it's not like I'm getting real-time updates unless I'm keeping up with you the whole time and seeing these small changes and re-updating. So what I'm trying to say is, like, last week when we left our lives to go on this spiritual retreat, the people and the environments that we hang out in, they reinforce the idea of Stephen. And it's not just that, but it's like they reflect onto you as much as you reflect on them, and it's like a back and forth until it's like, oh, this is Stephen. But what you left with, those people still have the fixed idea of Stephen. And 3 days is not, you're not gone for 2 years, you're gone for like a week.
Yeah.
So you go back and you have people that will view you as Stephen from a week ago, which is fair, because it's only been a week, and obviously they weren't with you on this spiritual retreat to see and understand the changes that you've gone through. So how do you bridge that gap between? For sure there's gonna be some pull back into the idea of Stephen from a week ago. It's 100%. It's gravity. It's just gonna pull you. But how do you rather than, let's say this is old Stephen, this is new Stephen, how do you make it so it doesn't go all the way back?
Yeah.
But it just goes back maybe some of the way, and it's probably healthy that it does go back some of the way, because you don't want to be so far out of the system that no one knows the hell's going on with you.
Yeah.
You need to let yourself get integrated back in, but maybe not all the way, because if you think that this is an improvement, then maybe that's where it should stay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? In terms of, I don't know if my analogy was good enough to.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect.
Because there's a fixed identity that people have.
Yep.
The mind works that way. It has to, in order for it to hold onto the idea of Stephen, it has to be fixed. But your idea of Stephen within your head now is probably much different than it was a week ago.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap?
Beautiful cue up, by the way. I have so much to say on this.
Okay, go
beautiful
ahead,
cue
I ran
up.
out of shit to
yeah,
say.
yeah,
So.
Beautiful cue up. And we actually talked about this. We actually already talked about this, which I'm really happy to bring it back up again, which is my first recommendation, right? If I was, and I'm speaking from a place of giving advice here because I think I have an answer to that, is I think when you're in step 1 and 2, you're in yourself and you're more in here, right? And so step 3, the best way to, I think, approach step 3 is, we talked about it, is practical, utility-based action, right? Environmental, in other words. The environment is so powerful, and I think that's the physical space. Curating the physical environment is the first place you go because it's the most manipulatable, right? I can't actually go shift things in people's minds or ideas about me as much as I can actually manipulate the physical environment. So I think one of the things I suggested to you was, oftentimes, right, let's say that my home is not as optimized for this new standard of living that I want, right? My kitchen's not set up their way, my meal prep stage, my office, whatever, like my laundry system, whatever. So I probably have a lot of ideas on how to implement those. Well, if I go back into it, it's a losing battle to say that I'm just gonna figure all that stuff out, right?
I'm just always gonna have
right.
a clean room or something without any type of
Yeah. But there is, I think, extreme value and merit in just shifting it for the sake of shifting it, right? Like let's say this couch right here that we're on in front of this TV, it always sucks me in. Like I know I'm supposed to do something, but I always it always gets sucked in this couch and I end up watching like 5 Netflix shows, right? You know what? I'm just gonna move that couch to that side now.
Right.
And readjust the TV. Like maybe it's still a couch that is pointed at TV, but it's not a couch pointed at TV in this direction, right? And so in that sense, you've done something that peels you away from your past environment. And so I think adjust the physical spaces, but where I think this is also really cool is that you could also adjust how you present yourself to people through the clothes you wear, right? We were exploring about how fashion, we're not super fashionable people, but there are people that are, and it's intriguing. And what does it mean to curate the experience of your clothes, right? Like every time, you're with somebody, I'm presenting to you a curated experience of what I choose to wear. Maybe it's also as simple as, man, wow, he always wears red, he's definitely changed because his clothes has changed. Like it's physical signaling to me who wants to put you back into your old box that I know, that I'm comfortable with. It's a predictable form of hack that I'm used to working with. Just giving small little hints and signals to your environment that you have changed. And that way your environment will also loosen its,
your
loosen
environment
its boundaries.
or your people? Or is it the
people are environment,
okay,
in this sense.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean?
Because you're using environment as actual environment.
Right, okay,
in your first example. So I just clarify.
Yes.
Environment, when you're saying environment, in this case, you mean like people.
Right, yeah.
Right.
People. So the people in this sense. Well, people will, it loosens their image of you, the existing image of you in their mind, right? And then it gives the space for you to now grow into that, to fill up that space. So I guess to sum it all up, I'm saying like, find things in the physical realm that you can change, to lead to allow inner change to fill in.
The change has to be, the end result of change has to be different action. Is that what we're going for here? Because changing your environment will change the action, or is it like the change in your environment is like a tactic to help you like take different action.
Precisely.
And I guess how do you okay, I get the environment thing, that's gonna change the action. The people thing is a little harder because people are more you can't just move this person over here.
So what if you came back and you only wore suits? Damn, hack has changed. Like, what the heck?
You can be like, this guy's a tool bag.
I know, exactly. We're not going to that far. But like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, but what's the one, what's that next step up in changing the physical presentation of yourself? It can be up or down, by the way, right? If you're someone who always wears suits, you could be like, oh shit, maybe I'm just going to wear t-shirts
But
more.
maybe, like, what if the change is not, like, let's say you want to change your relationship with someone.
Yeah.
I assume that during the spiritual retreat, you probably had a lot of I need to catch back up with this person. I need to talk to this person. I need to tell this person so and so. I need to do this and do that. Some of those conversations that you're gonna have are probably gonna be out of character.
Mm-hmm.
If you just go in there and be like, hey, I just gotta tell you something in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And it's obviously gonna catch them off guard because it's not within the framework, or it's not within the predictable framework of last week's Stephen. So how do you is there I think you still try.
Right.
But putting on a suit before trying is not gonna help that.
Well, here's a really easy one for me, actually, right? Like, I know that I have a lot of work relationships that I want to work on. I had changed, right? And I've only engaged with a lot of my coworkers through Zoom calls. Like literally virtual avatar, and actually we're at a point in this pandemic where like long time ago people got fatigued to cameras, so no one even goes on camera anymore. And I'm literally in my mind, I'm like literally saying I'm gonna do a coffee date with that person. Like we're at the point in the pandemic now where like I'm gonna like say, hey, like let's go here. They've never seen me. I mean, like I could show up like this, right?
Right.
They've never even seen this.
Well, I mean, in that case, yes. But I'm saying, like, what about like the people that are already in your life that have like a certain like, let's say like I don't know, your sister or your mom or your dad,
Yeah.
and they have a very like, this is Steven.
Mm-hmm.
This is Steven.
Yeah.
But if you have to have those conversations with those people, you know, like, I mean, putting on a suit's not gonna change how your mom views you. I mean, she might be like, oh, you're dressed nice today. Good job, son.
Yeah.
But the conversation still has to be had. And also after the conversation, how do you make sure that change sticks? Like, let's say you haven't like, I don't know, let's say you haven't told your mom that you loved her.
Yeah.
And you say that's completely out of character for you. And you want your mom to understand or feel that you love her. Because, I don't know, let's say that's important to you. How do you do that? But then also make sure that you don't revert, like, you know, just because you're like in this Zen state coming back from this retreat, you go and do that. But then, like, I don't know, a month from now, when your mom does something to piss you off, you're not like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like what's the? I'm not asking questions that I expect you to be able to answer. By the way.
Well, I have an answer for it.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have an answer, that's great. But I'm not. I don't want to just like,
Yeah.
you know, lob like these like questions over there and be like, all right, now answer.
You know, answer. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. No, but that's what makes it fun. So I actually have an answer for that I did do with my mom, which was I took her on a one-on-one date.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I took care of things, and I also, so more context that's helpful is that as you can imagine, like I have a lot of friction with my mom. She definitely wants to do things the Asian mom way a lot of times, and I'm like, you know, but I took her out on a one-on-one date, and I just let her, like I tried to just wrap around her, and we did whatever she wanted to do, right? But I also took care of things when things need to be taken care of to show her like that. So I don't think she ever saw, she either saw me as like someone who tried to push too hard myself or whatever, or incapable, like she doesn't really believe me, right? But by doing a one-on-one date first, that was out of character. By being in us going in this different situation, like a different physical environment, that was different. And then also by showing her a side of me, now that the situation has changed, I was able to show a side of me that she was more willing to accept as like, oh man, update the image of myself. Like she's more willing to update who I am, right? And so this is all, I think as you're saying though, if I had to sum it all up, I think the best way to show somebody that you've changed is to show in an immense amount of presence and ability to listen, right? And that was my takeaway of this spiritual retreat, by the way. The thing that I would bring forward to show everyone that I was different was that, because I have a tendency to, you know.
Do you have to show people that you're different?
You have to have something though, right? I feel that. Because otherwise, but your premise though, so let's go back to the premise, right?
Right.
The premise is, the odds are stacked against you.
It's a losing battle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The odds are stacked against you. So I'm trying to make a case for how can we even it a little bit more, right?
Right.
And how can we even the odds? It's still stacked against you, don't get me wrong. But so I think that you do want to show as much as possible to your environment, to the people, that there is a change that allows them to step back a little bit, or allows things to step back and for you to step forward, right? Otherwise, if they're just going to keep pushing, then it has to be a pushing game rather than because it's hard enough to even just step into an empty space, right?
Is it no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like because I was thinking about your mom, your mom example.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that, probably not a fact, but I would bet a lot of money, that my mom probably still views me as like a little, like 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, and that's probably never gonna change. I'm not banking on that changing.
Yeah.
Regardless of what I do.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, like, you know, because like, for instance, she doesn't think I know how to, like, let's say, wash dishes, even though we've opened 6 restaurants.
Yeah.
And let's pretend like I've never washed a single, you know what I mean? Like, just like I'm washing dishes, like, yo, you don't know how to do that. Get up. I'm like, we opened 6 restaurants. We obviously washed a few dishes there, or, you know, certain like things where I'm like, look, I can do this. But she views me as like this little like 10-year-old boy, and she always will. You know what I mean? And so so there's like a certain fixed identity, if you will, that this person has of me, and I'm wondering if it's necessary for them to update their identity of me within their head for me to affect this change within myself, because me understanding that my mom isn't going to change and understanding like the way it got to that point, like I can have a whole lot more empathy with her regardless of whether or not she updates that. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it's like okay, so like yes, if she updates her identity of me, that'd be great. That'll make things a lot easier. But it's really not easy to do that for a lot of people, and I think some people I think will be able to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the expectation, for me at least, is most people won't.
Mm-hmm.
Especially someone like your mom. You know, I'm pretty sure your mom probably still views you as like how she viewed you when you were growing up. You know what I mean? Even though you're like obviously a very successful, you know, dude that's very capable, and all your friends probably view you like that. But then your mom's probably like, I don't know, like, hey Steven, like, probably can't even do your own laundry. You know, shit like that, right?
Right.
And so is it necessary to have someone update their view of you, or is it just necessary to have the presence and the wherewithal to understand, you know, how this mechanism works and what their fixed view of you is and why that's the case, but still like love them anyways and have the presence around that and the awareness around that, and the change will still. I guess the hypothesis is if you can have the wherewithal and the presence around that, then the change is still in here, and you will still feel different and probably take different action despite anything from your external environment pushing you back in. I don't know. I'm riffing completely.
Yeah. It's absolutely not necessary. No, that's my short answer to it, right? You said it perfectly. It's not necessary at all. But my understanding of this whole thread that we're on is on the premise that it's hard.
Right.
Because if you had perfect focus, integration isn't like you would just do it. Right? Like everything that I felt like I needed to change, I would just do it. But it's the fact that the odds are so stacked against you, and it's so hard. It's so hard. Like I think that's what we're trying to solve. Like it's so hard to actually do. So how can you set yourself up best for success?
No, exactly.
Right?
And I'm saying that is the best way to set up yourself up for success, to continue the practice of like the things that help you keep presence in moments like that. You know what I'm trying to say? Like is that one of the one of the practices? Because there's multiple methods here, right? Yeah. One method is obviously changing your environment, changes your actions, and elicits certain feelings like and actions that way. Another method is, you know, helping people see that you've changed so that they open up a little bit so you can take one step forward. And then like another method can be.
So can we ground this in something concrete? That I think is a really great one to use. Let's use addiction. Right?
A what?
Addiction.
Oh, addiction.
Like let's say alcohol addiction, right? Let's say or not addiction, but let's say problematic behavior. Like let's say I've been drinking too much, right? Been drinking too much. Holy crap. Go to this retreat, decide like, damn, like drinking, like, you know, I need to change it. I don't want to drink anymore. I go back into my environment. But my environment is all my friends, they party all the time. All we do is party. The only thing we do is party. My work is just happy hours. And like, you know, I have breweries around me and my fridge has beer, right? Like, okay, I'm going into it with this intention of like breaking all of that. And I could just like be resolute throughout all of that. But there's an incredible amount of levers available to you, right? So that you can help that facilitate that change.
No, I get that. I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm saying I'm agreeing with all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm saying what happens, and it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
When you go in there and you do all those like little lever changes, you get rid of the fucking beer. You do like you know what you need to do. Like tell people, hey, listen, I've changed, so I don't like fuck with happy hours and stuff anymore. And let's say the people are like, yeah, cool, Steven, happy hour tomorrow.
Yeah.
And like let's say they don't change.
Yep.
Like they hear you because they hear words coming out of your fucking mouth.
Yeah.
But they don't feel the change on the visceral level to where they're like, oh shit, this dude's different.
Yeah.
So they keep treating you the same way. Now what happened? What is the, because I think you should do everything that's easy. Changing your environment is obviously easy. You don't have to argue with anyone to do that.
Right.
You know, letting people know you've changed.
Yeah.
That should be easy too, or relatively. But there's gonna be moments when like, you know, like you, because I'm thinking, okay, look, there's definitely people that I can't just excommunicate out of my life, even if I'm like, yo, this person's not gonna update. Say my mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or anyone in my family, or close friends that I really care about.
Sure.
You know, I'm not just gonna be like, all right, look, I can't just put this person in the corner like I would my couch and my TV.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to anticipate what I need to do when you move all the levers and the person doesn't change, and you have to be around that person, but you love the person, you care about that person, that's why you can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
So what would you do then, right? And I guess thinking aloud, I was like, okay, like for me, in order for me to like keep my presence rather than falling back into the ego in those moments, I have to understand how they got there in the first place. You know, why they have that view of me, and things like that, to have more empathy for the fact that, hey man, like I've been trying to quit alcohol, why you keep inviting me to happy hour, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, like
right.
Rather than that, be like, oh shit, like I guess I have been drinking with this dude for like the last 5 years, and you know, and they probably view it as a very like special time between us, and like they probably don't understand why.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier to be like patient, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's
I
like,
totally get what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So the thing is that you have to, in this game, right, you have to amplify the things that give you the best chances.
I agree with that.
No, right.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do the 1, 2, and 3, the easy low-hanging fruit first.
Right. I understand, right? But you need to bring your best self to it, right? And so I'm going to use fighting as another analogy that I have personal experience with, right? In a controlled sparring or drilling environment, it's very easy to know what to do and not lose your shit. I know that if this thing's, I'm going to duck this way and counter with this. Right? And I can do that, I can train it. And even in the sparring, we go from like low intensity to higher intensity, right? But if let's say I learn a move, coach says, hey, you like need to do this when this happens, and I logically understand all of it, understand why I need to do it, why it was a problem that I didn't do it before, and now how I need to do it, right? If you throw me right back into a fight, like there's no fucking chance I'm gonna be able to do it. Right? And also if you throw me back into a fight and I'm tired, like I'm not gonna be able to do it either.
No, of course.
Right? And so in order for me to actually do it in a fight, like all of these things must be true. I must have like done small incremental actions in different environments of like scaled intensity, so that when that moment shows up, I can actually deliver on that moment. Right. And so like I think that's the answer, really, honestly. You know? Right.
But I think you still need to understand the strategy of what's gonna happen when you go in. Like as a coach, I should still be like, Steven, so we're gonna train and we're gonna do reps, we're gonna do all so it becomes automatic.
Yes.
But when your ass goes in the ring and you get fucking punched in the mouth, do not expect to just be able to, like, you're gonna be in a fucking fight. And framing that, understanding that it's not just gonna be like, oh yeah, just because I fucking moved my fucking, like, you know, just because I did the 1, 2, and 3 doesn't mean that like it's gonna go all as planned. And so when you get in there, like, you know, like what's gonna happen when it's in, you know, like it's like, yo, I know that we're gonna hit this we're gonna hit the. I'm not saying you shouldn't do the 1, 2, and 3. The 1, 2, and 3 is like agreed upon.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that when you go back to integrate, there's gonna be people that don't change despite the 1, 2, and 3. Kind of like when you're in the fight, maybe you drilled shit a certain way, you go into the fight, and you get punched in the mouth,
Yeah.
and like the blocks don't come out the same way, the counters or whatever. It's like
Right.
And with those people, you can't like push them out. Let's say you have to be around them. Let's say you have to be around your mom or whoever.
Yeah.
Then what do we do there? And I think for me, I think without understanding how she got there in the first place, there'd be no way for me to even have a chance to be present in that moment.
Agreed. But I feel like, okay, so
I'm agreeing with
yeah,
all the things that you're saying to amplify, but I'm saying, okay, let's pretend like you did all that shit.
Yeah.
What do you do if your mom doesn't change? And that's my question for you. Like
you do all that stuff and your mom doesn't change.
Yeah.
Right.
And let's say she keeps treating you like a 10-year-old.
Well, so, okay, but the goal was never to change my mom, right?
No, I get that.
The goal was to...
I get that.
Yeah. So what's the goal is to change,
right?
Evoke change in myself.
Right. And if you can't, and I'm saying that if you don't have the presence in that moment, you're just going to change right back to how you were before because of your mom. If you don't have the presence within that moment.
100%.
Right. And that's why I'm saying that thing, the presence in that, understanding that's going to happen is important, because if you don't understand that and you get caught off guard,
right,
then it's really easy for the ego to just come back and be like, you know what, mom, like what the fuck?
Yeah. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that
yeah.
you lead with, oh yeah, just be present every fucking moment of your day. That's not the answer, because you're just gonna like.
I actually wait, hold on. I think that is the answer. That's why I glossed over it, because for me, maximal presence is the given, right?
But that's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do because it's like if you can already do that, then you've already like, what else is there?
Well,
does that imply like being like almost like woke in a way, like staying in your spirit all the fucking time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, right. So, I think the ultimate goal, and it's one where it's both the tool and the goal, destination itself is presence, right? The goal is to achieve presence, but to achieve presence, you have to have moments of presence. You know what I mean?
And I'm saying the moments that where it's most important is when it's most important for you to have presence, which is like when somebody's fixed. Like, let's say there's probably challenging people, like top 3 most challenging people in your life.
Yep.
Like, you know what's gonna happen when you're like around those people, when you're like trying to make a change.
Yeah.
Like, those are the people that I used to do this thing where like I used to like meditate, and then I'll go talk to my mom, and I'll try to be like as present as possible while talking to my mom. Yeah. Because I know that she has like these like things that would trigger
you. Yeah.
And then so it's like a spiritual practice. It's like I meditate.
They call that a yoga. By the yoga,
right?
I love it as a generic sense, and yoga is literally just a vehicle for you to achieve higher presence.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I'll go talk to my mom, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try.
Yoga.
Every time my mom comes to talk to me, I'm gonna try to stay present for a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously sometimes it works, but then sometimes it doesn't, and I'm like, damn it, fucking missed it. But it's because I know for a fact that if I'm not present around my mom, then it's like not who I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so anticipating that, when we come back from this, like I know it's gonna happen. Yeah. I can see the old hack in these situations, and I'm like, okay, the new hack needs to be present here, and here.
See, I want to pause there. Okay, so I think this is exactly where we're talking past each other. We're not, so we're totally on the same page. Right. First of all, we're totally on the same page. We're just talking past each other a little bit. Because you literally just said how you would meditate and then talk to your mom for a minute, like time box it, right? So she didn't change, yes, but you created this environmental situation, this frame, in which you were trying to maximize your chance of succeeding, right?
No, exactly, and and that's what I'm saying. I'm I think I'm saying the same thing, but I don't know why it's not hitting. Because I'm saying like we should do everything. So we're talking about like when we get back into the environment, or when we get back to the step 3 of 1, 2, and 3 of putting ourselves back into the system. How do we maximize our chances of keeping the changes that we want, right? And I think you listed change around your environment to make actions that you want easier.
Yeah.
And then, you know, perhaps like change, I guess, like you said, like, you know, dress differently to present yourself differently to other people to show you you've changed, so they give you space to change. So let's assume you did that. So I'm talking about, let's say you do that, and then they're still fixed in the same like idea of the old you.
Right.
So then what do you do, right? And I guess for me, I was like, okay, well, my implication is some people don't change.
Yeah.
So what do I do with those people? I was saying that I think that you kind of need to understand the lay of the land, if you will, of the people in your life that are most likely to. Who are the people that have probably were the people that made you realize that you should be going to the spiritual retreat in the first place?
Right.
You know, for me, it's probably like my mom and maybe other people in my family, or people that I'm always like, you know, butting heads with.
Right.
So to understand that there will be moments when your ego is going to want to come out, and to understand that that's probably going to happen, and you're probably not going to win all those battles. I think it gives you a much better chance of winning some of those battles. To be like, okay, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be like, you know, mom, something, something, something. And then she's going to be like, something, something. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck?
Right.
So, and I might not be, you know, that's like getting punched in the mouth in a fight.
Yeah.
You might not be able to respond there like the best way you want to. But because you know it's going to happen, you might be better prepared and win some of those situations. But, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is what I would say, right? I think this is maybe because we didn't define some of the fundamental premises up front, right? Like, I don't think you can actually change people, right? Like, that's a given, right? So there's no changing people actually, at all. They can only change themselves.
Right.
And so it's all what you can do and facilitate from literally only anything that you can ever do on your side, right? And I totally agree with you. Like, in step 1 and 2 of this, you should have come to this realization that your maximal presence is an intention will be required at certain times. Right. If you don't have that, you're gonna fail for sure. So I agree with all of that. And so I think that you do have to be, like, if you could just be present and have perfect willpower and execution, you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation because you would just do it. But I do think you have to have these little things that help you there. And I'm gonna, when you're talking, and I'm sorry, this is not gonna be a clean transition, but I'm just gonna try to bring it back to a thought that I had when you were talking, which is, you have your basic, like, let's say Vipassana awareness style of meditation, right? Which is like, all right, be completely present in here. But then there's also like meditations that, are mantra based or more structured, right? Like meta meditation, right? Like, so I do believe that in moments, if you're fully present, you can love properly. Love all beings, understand the suffering of all sentient beings, all that stuff, right? But meta meditation is a way for you to make sure that that intention comes through stronger by literally saying, like, you will love, like, I'm gonna love myself, and I have to love outwardly. And I don't know, someone might say, why do you even need meta meditation? Why do you even need mantras? Like, just be present. But I think that this is where we try to be a little bit more creative with the methods, right? to kind of help break through, which is a losing battle, right? So feel free to respond to anything you want.
I'm actually not sure what your point is there.
Yeah, I can acknowledge that.
Because I'm trying to think what I'm saying. I think the thing is like, okay, throughout this retreat, I think I learned a lot about myself,
Right.
and I think you probably learned a lot about yourself too.
Yeah.
I think you've probably figured out a lot of how you got to where you are, and you probably, if it was anything like my experience, like probably had a lot of compassion and empathy for yourself, probably more now than you did before. And I think that compassion and empathy goes a long way. For ourselves, but also if we can like figure out a way to give that to the people that aren't going to change. Because through that frame, it makes it okay that they're who they are, regardless of anything. So I guess our compassion and empathy stays with them regardless. I don't know if that makes sense. It's almost like when we're talking about treating people like toddlers.
Yeah.
Like if a toddler is like fucking acting up,
Yeah.
you're still gonna be like, oh my, I love this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
like
it's not their fault.
Yeah,
they're
like
just
Leo's like throwing
yeah.
shit out. Like, this is pretty funny. You know?
Yeah.
You're gonna go pick that up, Leo. Still love you.
Yeah.
But then even if he's like,
You're not gonna take it personally.
yeah, he's like banging his head on the like just like acting up. I'm just like, all right, man. And he's a baby.
Yeah.
I might be like, yo, Leo, you need to stop doing that, before I put you in the corner.
Yeah.
But love you, bro. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when an adult does it, or someone that's like, somebody that's like butting heads with you, it's really hard to realize that adult is also the same as that toddler.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like through the environment that they got to, like that's the reaction that they think is okay when they have these feelings come up within them. Now in that moment, if we can remember, oh shit, like that adult is like that toddler, then you can take care of the situation, like, help Leo like calm down and not take it personally. And it's almost like you have this higher plane of awareness above Leo, where you can act from that, as opposed to where if let's say I was Liana and Leo and Leo's doing that, I might, throw Lego at him.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
because they're on the same like level of consciousness. So I don't know. I think the awareness that people are toddlers, when we were talking about it before,
Yeah.
that was, it sounds dumb, honestly, but I think it's super helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think humans are like that.
Yeah.
And if you can act the way you would act to a toddler, because I'm using that analogy because people hopefully can understand what toddlers, you act with empathy and compassion.
Well, I want to reframe that a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
can you
Yeah.
please?
So it's the fact that we all have an inner child, right? And a lot of who we are and the way we behave is a result of what happened to us as children, and that and that inner self is still there, that's hurt, right? And so I think it's not so much like treating people by toddlers, but seeing the inner child within them that's hurt and reacting, right? Like,
it's funny because I'm like, I'm actually like looking at this person like, it's a big ass toddler.
Yeah.
So like when people act up,
But that's their ego acting up, right?
no, I get that, but it's like
Yeah.
it's like the toddler's ego acting up too. It's like the ego and the toddler's like
Yeah.
like doesn't know how to control their emotions,
Correct.
so it's
Right.
comes out the way it does.
Right.
And they don't know that they're supposed to act like this separate, they don't know that there's a more productive way to,
Right.
and it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Um,
But so here's the thing, though, right? Like, again, I think this is where we're still talking past each other. It is very hard to keep that frame when a full-grown person,
no,
adult.
I get that.
Okay,
but I'm saying understanding.
that's
But understanding that frame helps with that. It's hard to do it, but it's much easier.
Correct.
With that frame than without it.
I'm already saying that you've already done that in step 1 and 2. You've already understood that frame.
That's not true. That needs to be said explicitly.
Okay.
Because I don't think the implication is as I don't think the implication is as strong without that metaphor. If I don't say, hey, listen,
Okay.
like people are like toddlers, but one of toddler acts of you're not gonna be bringing yourself down to the level of consciousness of the toddler and like yelling at them ideally, and you understand why, because that's not how they learn and that's not how.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? Like I'm saying, like
Okay.
without that framework, without that metaphor, like I have a much harder chance of keeping the frame in the moment.
Got it.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, got it. So now I'll say this. Okay, step one, we're updating this framework now.
Right.
An explicit part of step one is the realization of interconnectedness of all things. Like everything is connected to this degree that I didn't see. Like all humans are suffering. All things are like everyone is trying. You know what I mean? Like that's a step one for me. And maybe you don't get all the way there, right? But there's some realization that there's more to this. Like because I gotten out of it, I see the system overall. I'm like, like you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's why I use the sleeping example, right? Like I step back and was like, oh my god, like that person, like I reacted that way because I got bad sleep. Then maybe that person reacted that way because they got bad sleep, and that now I see that completely differently. You know what I mean? So I think that so it's worth calling out. By the way, I'm not disputing that. It's worth calling out. Step one needs to come with like a deep understanding of like the overall, like the connectedness of all and the systems, because I think all of our frustrations and problems and stuff are as a result of being too localized, individualized, and specific, right? You're not understanding like it feels so real and heavy and like dramatic, but it's not, because you get back out, you're like, wait, everyone is worried about death. Everyone is like worried about like jobs and family and friends. Like everyone's like fucking all that shit. And then you're like, oh, now I have empathy and I can understand all of this a lot more. Now, how do I carry this into my like localized things where the drama is back on now, right?
Right. No. Yeah. No. I get that. You're we're gonna get localized again.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna be one-on-one with somebody, not like with the view of the system, and we're gonna be like, like man, fuck this person.
Fuck this person.
Right, and that's simply gonna happen.
Someone cuts you off.
Someone's gonna say some shit, and you're gonna be like, the fuck. And we're probably gonna. I'm 100% gonna forget, but I'm trying to figure out how to remember how to deal with it. Hopefully, in the moment, if possible, and.
That'd be a funny podcast name. The fuck. The fuck.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. I do think the toddler framework for me is helpful, just because I deal with toddler. I deal with Leo and Liana a decent amount, and sometimes they do shit. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like you just want to be like, man, like if this kid, like I mean, if Leo was doing that, it's cool. He's 4.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm always like, all right, I got a lot of love for this kid, regardless of him acting up and doing like stuff like that. But imagine that kid was like 8. Or then 16 or 20.
You know what's another framework in the opposite direction that really helped me was when I realized my parents were just human and people. Yeah. I know we use moms as an example of triggers, but they like my mom and dad are actually really things. They actually ground me so much now that they're getting older, and I realized that seeing them in this old state and just being like and tracing backwards like. Damn, they've just been trying their best this whole time.
Right.
And now they're old and they're still stuck in some of their ways. But they're just old now though. I can't
The framework also, I think that you said that stuck out just now.
Yeah.
The fact that people are trying their best at all times.
Yeah.
To be able to give someone that, I think helps a lot. With, and
step one,
it's I know it's a given, but it's necessary to call that out because for me that like when you said that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. People are trying their best at all times.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think to put those words behind that, and so for me, I'd probably be like, shit, like that's it. Like like what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go back. there's gonna be some shit. I'm like, the fuck? There's gonna be an argument, and then I'm gonna sit down like, damn, it got me out of my fucking mode. You know, like I'm not zen anymore. But then if I can remember, oh shit, people are trying their best at all times. Then they'll pull me a little bit out in that moment, and then maybe I'll have like the courage or the capacity in that case to go apologize when I wouldn't have before.
Yeah.
When I wouldn't have been able to be like, because if you're like, man, fuck, like they're trying their fucking best and I don't know what's going on. Maybe they didn't get any sleep. Maybe this and this. Maybe like whatever. But I know for sure they're trying their best, and you're able to just. I understand that after this retreat.
Yeah.
I you know, like this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, like everyone's trying their best.
Yep.
Like, and I feel that right now, right? But like, I'm gonna forget that. I'm gonna forget that for sure at some point.
Yeah.
But I think just those words, people are always trying their best at all times. Like you just said that.
Yeah.
And that was the statement that just stuck out to me in that. And hopefully, when I hit that wall, when I'm in, maybe not in the middle of the argument, I might not be able to pull myself out and do it.
Yeah.
But like 5 minutes after, 10 minutes after, a day after even, like man, fuck, like people are actually trying their best.
Yeah.
I can still correct the action. Maybe I wouldn't have beforehand, but now that I know this, I can apologize when I wouldn't have. Something like that, I don't know.
Perfect. Oh, we got somewhere very beautiful with that. Yeah. And that's another big part of the so what, right? Which is a big part of the so what is you're still going to react and trigger, and everything's gonna happen the same way it happened before, but the cycle time in your post reflection needs to go down, right? Like say for example, you have a temper problem and you fucking lose your cool like you did before. The amount of time it takes you to realize that, right, goes down little by little up until it eclipses the point where you don't actually, maybe you get mad and you immediately realize, oh fuck, I just lost my temper, right? And you just got, and it just gets smaller until you don't lose your temper, right? And that's the work of integration, I think, and change, right? And so I wanted to make that point real quick, but also I wanted to share a personal thing that I realized in the past too, and it's very personal to me, which is I realized that everyone is trying their best, no matter like whatever you see, that they're literally doing their best, like what they like, whatever, and that's why. And then I realized that I'm also always trying my best.
Right.
Whatever comes out in this specific moment is my best, no matter what. There's no ifs and buts or no qualifiers or conditions about it.
Right.
Whatever it is that is my best at that point in time. And so that gives you a little bit more grace. So as you're trying to make this change and integrate and manifest, realize that it will always be your best. Best, you know what I mean? And then this is where it gets really beautiful too. Once you realize that, you realize also that each moment is perfect. Because there's nothing to add or take away or whatever. Each moment is just a manifestation of what is at that time for everything.
Right.
You know? And then you can just accept and flow so much more easily and access a higher level of presence because you know that each moment is perfect. Right? And that when you need to, something is asked of you, you don't overthink about it, you don't like worry about it too much, you just do it because it's always going to be perfect.
Right.
You know? And I think that should almost give you chills. That should give you this immense sense, I think, of wholeness.
It's like permission to be.
Yeah, permission to be. Yeah, and I learned this through fighting, but this lesson came to me with fighting. When I realized, like, cause I used to fucking obsess first place or bust. You know what I mean? But then I realized that, man, like, cause let's say like I fought a guy, right, and I lost. In my mind, my first thing was like, man, no, I'm better than that guy. Like I'm better. No, and that night, he was better than me. Right. It doesn't matter. Right. Like he won, I lost. That was as good. That was my best that night. Right. And that's it. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
each moment is perfect. Everyone's trying their best.
This would be interesting looking back on this pod in like 6 months.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Yeah.
like, I guess we're back in the system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The simulation.
Yeah, I mean, simulation system, what do you want to call it? But yeah, it'll be interesting. This pod will be interesting in a few months, just because.
Yeah. So we're an hour and a half.
Yeah, we should probably call it.
I think it'd be good.
This is a good rambly. And this one was a little bit rambly, but I think it was good because we're doing like a live. I mean, all of them are live, but we're doing like a live. Like, hey, we just went to this retreat. So what?
Yeah.
And this was kind of like a little bit of the so what. And I think there's a lot more around it, but we're talking in terms of. We're talking in a very general sense of like, you know, leaving systems, changing, reintegrating back in the system.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to do with only retreats. It could be anything. Moving away, moving back.
Right.
Taking a week-long vacation, coming back, like, you know, just leaving a group of friends for a while so you can work on yourself and then going back into it. So I think, I mean, I don't know, this was I enjoyed the conversation.
This is one of the most meaningful ones for me, and I'll say why, because this was very meaningful to me because one of the reasons why we started this podcast was because when I talk to you, Hack, right, I feel like we just get into the work. Like I don't I talk to other people, I have to like clarify a million things, hedge, disclaimers, like, you know what I mean? But I like the work that we do in processing, but I definitely also as we talked more, became more friends, and did this podcast, I was like, I hope this is also not an echo chamber, like, and a confirmation bias. So the fact that there was like, we were talking past each other for a bit, like, I thought that was cool. And like, I'm still trying to find points where we like might even disagree.
Yeah.
So in a meta sense, it was really great because I felt like I went a long way personally in my own reconciliation of concepts, but also we were like, you know, doing that.
Yeah.
In a very messy state right now. We're literally coming out of step 2.
Yeah, we had to put the words behind it so that we can carry it with us. And I think when you said, I always like the framework of the toddler thing. Yeah. I actually think I learned that from you indirectly. Because I remember one time we were in Thailand, and you were like, you know what, Thai people, like, they're like super nice because they think that if they, let's say, get angry, then it's like they're acting like children in a way, so they never get, like, it's almost like on the person to remember that, you know, they're not children. And I was like, oh, that's a cool framework. It's kind of like, it puts it's not the external thing that affects you. Yeah. It's the locus of control is within yourself. Within a child, they don't have that locus of control yet. Right. So it's okay for them to act up. But as an adult, if you act up, it's because you're acting like a child. Right. In a way, right? And then so I think in American culture and where we're from, we don't have that framework.
It's seen as alpha, like it's seen as like...
Right, a lot of times like you're...
dominating.
Like if you get angry, because something happened to you, then it's like, oh yeah, that thing made you angry. Yeah. It's not you.
Oh, that person's strong. They're like...
It's like, it's not, and then so to remember that people are like children sometimes, that helped me. I was like, oh yeah, like this person acting up, and you know, it's just like a child acting up sometimes, and that helps me deal with it better. Because with a child, you're a lot more patient. You can bring compassion to that situation a lot easier if that's the framework you're working from. And I think when you said people are trying their best always, that's a very simple thing to remember. And anytime you're mad at somebody, that's a very simple thing. And even yourself, anytime you're like negative about yourself, anything, I mean, you're trying your fucking best always. I mean, if what you're giving is always your best, I get that. And so to remember those things when shit's gonna, you know, when the integration doesn't fit, when you're like, yo, let me get back into this keyhole like this and can't turn the fucking lock, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like, that's what we need to remember. So those, like, that was the thing I'm gonna stick with probably.
I love that, man. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, wrapping that up. And I think that I also have maybe a closing statement on all this too, or not a statement, but this was a spiritual retreat, right? And by and large, I think this is the most open we've ever been to a lot of new age philosophies and esoteric concepts.
like astral projection.
And one of the things that I think that, but going back to the more practical sense, I think what we're saying is like, all right, presence, intention, carrying forward this will, like this intention and focus is going to be hard. How do we keep that? Because that's the literally the single number one like indicator of success here. And I know that you asked the question, like, oh, is that what it means to have your third eye open?
Right.
And I regardless, I don't know what third eye actually is, honestly,
right.
but
I don't even. That's why.
But I imagine that intuitively it would make sense that if you could always see, like for example, you and I, sorry, I'm jumping all over, but you and I, we like this child framework, but we have to use conscious effort to turn it on. Right. And especially if it gets really hard, it's harder to turn on.
Right.
But maybe there are people who always see people in that way,
right.
And they don't have to ever, and therefore they have done it. Right. Like they're there.
Yeah, like they're always like present, if you will.
They're always present. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we work towards. I don't know how to turn it on, otherwise it would always be on. Because why would you ever want it off if you can have it on all the time?
Yeah.
I think you would be I don't know.
Well, so I think about this, right? I use food as a metaphor for awakening.
Sure.
Right? There's an awakening with food and diet. Once you realize the American diet is like, you're just like, holy crap, I will never see food the same way again.
Right.
And I think that at a certain point, that becomes second nature. Right? It is certainly for us, but we had to like track macros. We had to do all this. We had to experience manipulating our weight and our energy, like all these things. But now it's completely second nature.
Right.
And I hope optimistically that the practice of presence will become second nature to us, but through little tricks, through little ways of like segmenting the experiences out, so that we can win little moments.
Right.
And understand how to go back.
Yeah, it's like maybe that's the opposite. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Because I was trying to think about how to bring presence to moments where I should have been more present.
Yeah.
But those are the moments where it's like level 10.
Yeah.
Like maybe I should be trying to bring. Maybe that's why they have you try to bring presence to like little things like brushing your teeth, or like eating. You know, like when you're eating, get off your phone and just like taste every morsel of rice that goes on your, you know, like things like that. And maybe in doing that, you know, the level 1 moments, then eventually you'll be able to do like, you know, level 3 moments, and then level 4 moments, and then when it comes to level 10 moments, you know, like somebody like actually pissing you off, then you have a fighting chance. Because I mean, I know for you as a, you know, when you're coaching people in Muay Thai, you're probably not, you know, starting them with like, you know, like the hardest like combos and shit, you know, all that stuff. You're probably like, okay, this is how you throw like a light jab. Yeah. And this is how you throw like, I don't know, like something slightly harder. Right. Okay, after you master this, we're going to next thing. Yeah. But here I am like trying to be like, hey Steven, teach me that like, teach me like that like 8-hit combo. And how to counter and dodge, and I'm like, and you're probably like, what the like you don't even know how to punch yet, bro. I feel great. That's exactly what I was trying to say with the environment stuff, right? That's exactly it. Like to make it easy. And I think that's why cold showers are such a big thing now, because it's the easiest way to teach somebody presence. Because it's like, fuck, this is cold, and they are nowhere else. They're like, I'm not thinking about like that thing that I said yesterday made me feel stupid. I'm like, oh shit, it's like, I'm fucking here. And so this little moment where you can practice presence. Like, hey, maybe don't squirm. Practice just sinking into it, right? I think those little level 1 moments, you know, one-shotting rats in the fucking beginner land is like really, no, you're not one-shotting them. That you're like fucking taking 16 hits to kill a level 1 rat. People aren't gonna know what that means, but I like that analogy. Well, we had a previous podcast where we talked about. People don't watch our podcast, bro. Okay, we need to do the video game podcast one, right? And then we can just say, go back, look at the video game podcast, because it's like, but no, we should do. This is a good one to wrap up on. Yeah, level 1 rats. Yeah, one shot. Eventually, you one shot them. So, all right. Oh, on that. Peace out.